learning crash course. Today we continue our discussion about Python and learn about this thing that I wrote on the board. But before that, we are going to solve the last session exercise, which was to extract the common list and difference list between two lists. Okay. For writing that, it is pretty straightforward. First, I define my two lists. Then, for extracting different elements, I just need to convert A to Z and also convert B to Z, then get XOR of them. Okay, why? If you look back at this slide, the different elements means that we are going to want here and here. Okay, so this means that we should use XOR between two lists, between two sets. So I convert A to Z and B to Z, and then we operate XOR on them. After that, the result is set, so we should convert it back to list. Okay, if now we print different elements, as you could see, we have different elements. For common elements also, we could do that similarly, but instead of XOR, we could use AND. Okay, as you could see in here, now we will have common lists, because common elements means that we want here. Okay, and so here means A and B, which is this one. Okay. Okay, and this is a last session exercise, which was pretty straightforward. Okay. Now we want to talk about functions. How should we define functions in Python? Okay, in general, why should we define functions? Functions are very useful for two general purposes. The first reason is for organizing code. When you want to have a clean and very neat code, you need to have different sections that define the functions. Okay, so the first reason for using and defining function are organizing code, and the second reason is that to prevent repeating yourself. Sometimes you want to do the same operation for multiple times. Okay, like let's say I have different line, which is print I, print Y, and or let's add another thing and print hello. Then I want to run this 3 times. Okay, for this I could if I defined all of these three operations as one function, let's call this fun 1, then for using these 3 times I could just use that 3 different times, just one line. Okay, so it is more organized, and also I could pass variables to my functions, that the functions do the same things but with different variables. So I think you know enough about the functions. So let's get to how to define functions in Python. For defining functions in Python, you need the keyword def. Def means that, okay, you want to define a function. Then in here you will have the name of your function, which could be anything, name of function. Then in here you will have the variables that you want to pass to your function. Let's say it is a and b. And the great thing about in Python is that you don't need to specify the type of a and b, and the Python itself determine that. Okay, and then you need colon, and you need indent in here. Indent, actually I think I didn't talk about indent explicitly in Python for you guys, but you should know that in Python, when you want to define some operations for example function, you should get indent to that operation. So when I want to write operation 1, operation 2, and I want to specify that it is for this function, I should indent operation 1 and 2. And as you could see, when I write this, it means that operation 1 does not belong to this function. If I want to put that in this function, I should get that an indent. Okay. Now let's say our function is just calculate a plus 2 times b, then return c. Okay, so this is the definition of function in Python. So you need the keyword def, then name of your function, then the input variables of your function, and in here the return value of your function. If your function does not return anything, you could write this in this way. Okay, it means that your function does not return anything. Okay, now let's call our function. For calling your function, let's print that print. Let's call this custom add of 2 and 3. As you could see here, it is 8. It is 2 plus 3, 2 times 3, which is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. Okay, which I have that in here. So defining function is pretty straightforward in Python. Okay, now you know how to define functions in Python, and if you want to pass a list as variable to the function, there is no difference in defining the function. Let's say my function calculate average of list. Okay, get average. For getting average, we saw that we just need to calculate the sum. We could actually done that in one line, sum A divided by len of A. Okay, now in here I could just pass get average and pass a list to that. Okay, as you could see in here, I will have the average of the list, and I easily pass a list to my function. Okay, and if you want your function to return multiple things, let's say this function return the average and the list itself. Okay, now in here you could get both of them, mean or average, and A is equal to or the list print average, print the list. Okay, as you could see in here, I just got two values from my function, so it is nothing difficult in defining function for that returns multiple values. Okay, and it has multiple output. Okay, now sometimes we actually want to have a file in which we define some different functions that, and we want to use those functions in another Python file. Okay, let's say I wrote the average of list here, and also another function which is get mean of list, which is the minimum of that list. And now I want to create another Python file which is called that test2. Okay, now in this file I want to use those functions. If I write get average list, as you could see in here, I cannot use that because and the Python does not know what is this function, but I want to use it in this file, in this Python file. And as you could see here, the directory of them is the same. So if the directory is the same, you could just simply write import test. Okay, so now you will have the functions from the test. Okay, without .py. So you don't need .py. You just write the name of the file. Okay, without a py. Okay. Now I want to use the function get average list from the test file. So I write test dot get average list. Now it is okay to use that. Okay, get average of list. Okay, get average of list 1 2 3. I could print that. Okay, as you could see in here, I have the average list, and I use the function from another file in my current file. when you import test, now we have two functions, test.get average of list and get min of list. Okay, sometimes I just want to import one function, okay, from another file. For this I could write from test import the name of your function that you want to use. For example, this is the get min of list. Okay, in this case you don't need to write test.get min of list. In this case, just get min of list. Now you will have the mean. And sometimes you just don't need, you just don't want to write this test dot. For this you could just import all of the function from test. Okay, for importing all of the function from test, you could write from test import all of the functions. Star means all of the things in test you want to import them to test2. Okay, and as you could see in Python, you in opposite with C or C++, you don't need to explicitly define main, and your operations executes line by line. Okay, but if you want to import some of the files or some of the functions from another file, it is better to write the main function in Python. Let's do this to know the difference. Let's say I test my get average list in here is 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now when I run this, I will get this average. Now in here, I want to now test. I want to run this test2 file and import the function from test file. If I run this, I will see that, oops, now I will have the output of this and then the output of this. As you could see, this is not very nice because I just want to execute this. Okay, I don't want to execute this one. Okay, for preventing the execution of this, I could write if name is equal to main, for my files, which is actually more organized way to write my code. Okay, now if I run this, I will get just the minimum of this list, and this line is not executed. In fact, when I run test2.py, the name, actually this is a variable in Python. Okay, when you execute test2.py, the name in this file is main. Okay, so the Python execute this, then it will for executing this, it will go there. Then in here, in this file, the name is not main because this is not your main file. So the name in here is not main, so it does not execute this line. Okay, so it is better to write your code always with main. Okay. it is more organized, and also if you want to import something in another file, you will not have a problem of executing all lines from those codes. Okay, now we will know about import and also indent. As you could see in here, when I want to define something is in if, I should get indent to that. Okay, if I have another if in this, let's say if this is less than 2, print yay. Okay, now as you could see in here, for this print I will have 2 indent. Okay, the first indent is for this scope, because all of these lines are in the scope of this if. Okay, and this is the second indent is for this condition, because I want to say that if getMin of list is less than 2, then perform this. So this statement is for this condition. Okay, so it should have indent in comparison with this, so it have two indents. So if I had another if in that, then I will have another indent in here. Okay, so that is so simple to have nested indents in Python. Okay, now we know how to define functions in Python. Actually, we saw how to define conditionals in Python for writing if, elif, or else in Python, but let me tell you some notes about them. So if you want to check two variables are equal or not, you could use equal equal. Okay, print equal. Let's say a is 2, b is 2. The output of this operator is true or false. It is true if a is 2, it is true if a and b are equal, and it is false if a is not equal to b. Okay, so as you could see in here, now they are equal. So the if statement get a Boolean value, so it is not important here. You don't have to explicitly define this. The output of the whole thing is Boolean. So let's print here. As you could see here, the output of this operator is a Boolean value, which now is true. So in here, it is equal to something like this now. Okay, if I want to say that if a is not equal to b, then do something, I could write this. It means that, okay, it is true, the whole thing is true when a is not equal to b. So when they are equal, this does not execute. Okay, sometimes I want to not a Boolean value. Let's say I have true, a is equal to true, and I want to execute a condition when a is false. Okay, for this I have two choices. The first thing is that I could write if a is false. Okay, it means that, okay, if a is false, then perform something. Or instead of that, I could write if not a. So in this case, if a is false, then not of a is true. Okay, so this condition will be executed in that case. You should just note the difference between is and equal. Okay, the is different from equal in the sense that if for variables, for single variables, they are not different, but if you have something like this, 1 2 3 and 1 2 3, then if I write if a is b, then print equal, I will see that it does not execute because a is not b. The values of a are equal to the values of b, but a is not equal to b. It is different list from b. Okay, if I write here b is equal to a, now it is executed. Okay, because in this case a is equal to b itself. If I write a2 b2, then as you could see, for variables they are the same. So in case of variables you could use is or equal, but in case of that you have lists, you should be careful in using is. Okay, and this is your exercise that we solve that in the next session, but just you please work on that and think on that. How should you write a function that takes a list and a Boolean value, then you want to extract the prime numbers or indice of them based on that Boolean value. So the prime number is a number that is just it could be divided by 1 and the number itself. Okay, so for example 2 is prime because it could be divided just by 1 and 2, and this divide and the remainder of this divide has is 0. Okay, the remainder of those divisions. And 3 is prime, 5 is prime, 7 is prime, and so on. Okay, but 9, for example, 9 is not prime because for 1, 3 and 9 the remainder of divisions are 0. Okay, but just for 1 and the number itself, the divisions should be 0. Okay, the division remainder should be 0. Now I want from the exercise wants to get a list, then return prime numbers or prime indices. In this case, the prime indices are 0 and 1. Okay, so you need to write a function to do that. I actually advise you to write it in two functions. One function is one function is this, which is get prime numbers or indices, and the second function is that just check for one number, is that prime or not. It could be is prime. That this function could return a Boolean value and states that a function is a number is prime or not. Okay, and this is actually a good exercise for you to get familiar with writing functions and how to use them in Python. Okay, now actually you know basic concepts in Python. Now it is better to learn some tricks in Python to write your codes more clean and actually write your code in a more Pythonic way. Okay, let's say you have a list that is 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and you want to convert all of those elements to float. Now, as you could see here, they are all integers. Okay, if I tell Python print int of a, as you could see here, it throws an error. Okay, because the integer performs on just one element, not a list. Okay, so when I want to perform an operation on each elements of list, I could use map in here. Okay, the map takes a function. In here I want to apply int to each element, so I write int, and the second is list. Okay, then I convert it to list. What does it do? It means that apply int to each element of a. So when you execute this, it will apply int on 2, then it will convert sorry, it is float, because we want to convert them to float. Okay, so first it apply float function to the 2, and so it converts it to 2. Okay, after that it apply that to 3. Okay, and so on. Now, in comparison with this case, if I wanted to do that with just for loop, I could do that with for element in a b dot extend float element, right? As you could see here, I have same result, but instead of doing this, which is not very clean and neat way for writing that, I could just write that with very clean way, which is map function float and a. So this is much more clean than in comparison with previous coding style. Okay. So the first argument is a function. Okay. Instead of this function, I could write another function. Let me just write. Let's say we want to add 2 to each element. So I write a function that takes an element, an integer or float, and then return x plus 2. Okay. Now I could write in here add 2. Now as you could see in here, now I have 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is 2 plus 2 is 4, 3 plus 2 is 5, and so on. Okay. But let's say you have lots of these maps in your code, and then defining these little functions are not very efficient and clean, you know, and maybe they have not very meaningful. Add2 is not actually a very special function. In these cases, we have another thing which we called anonymous function. The anonymous function are a kind of function that has no name, and you could use them in these cases. Okay, they are special kind of function that you could use them in these cases. For defining anonymous function, you could write lambda, this is a keyword, and then write the input of the function. Then you will have colon, which means that now you want to define the function, and the function is x plus 2. So this function takes x and it returns value of x plus 2. Okay, if I run that, I will get the same result, and this is much more clean in comparison with previous coding style. Okay, now you know how to actually using these lambda functions, and map also could shrink your code a lot and make it more beautiful and understandable. Okay. We have another thing for performing a list, which is filter. As you could see in here, map takes one function and the list itself to perform that function of on every element of the list. Okay. Now let's say we want to just keep the values those are above 3. Okay, in this case we could use filter. The filter, like map, takes a function, but the function return values should be boolean, which is true or false. In this case I could use lambda x is greater than 3 and apply that on A. Okay, now I will have just 4 and 5. So what does it mean when I write lambda x? Means that I have an anonymous function which the input is x and the output of this operation is true or false. If x is greater than 3, the output of this function is true, otherwise the output is false. So when I apply filter function, filter on 2, it checks the output of this. The output of this for 2, because 2 is not greater than 3, the output is false. So this is false. When the output is false, the filter remove that element, so it removes 2. Then for 3, the 3 is not greater than 3, so it removes 3 also. But for 4 and 5, the output of this is true, so it holds 4 and 5. Okay, so this is the filter. Could perform very amazing things for us. Okay, as you could see in here. Now you know how to use lambda functions and map and also filter. Now sometimes you want to sort your filter. Okay, let's do this in this way. We saw that if we perform a.sort, then we will have the sorted list in increasing order. If we want to have that in decreasing order, we could pass reverse truth to the functions, to the method sort, then we will have the sorted list in decreasing order. Sometimes our list is something like this. Every element itself is a list. And let's say we want to sort this this list based on the second element of these elements. Okay, in those cases, the sort function gets a key. The key is a function that tells how the sort function could perform, and actually how should it sort the list, based on what. Now if I tell it is a lambda function which takes x, and the output is the second element, because x0 means the first element, x1 means that the second element, then in this case you will have the sorted based on the second element in decreasing order. So it is 3, 2, 2, 2, 1. Now so what did I do? As you could see here, the key is a lambda function itself. It means that for sorting method, pass, for example, this value to the lambda function, and this returns the second element of x, so it returns 2 to the key. And then for the second element it returns 3, then and so on. So it returns 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 4 key. Now it is like the sorting of one element list. Okay, so it could sort it based on the key. I hope that maybe it looks a little complicated, but it is not actually if you just write some of them for yourself and gives you could actually search for another examples in the websites, and to know how could you do that. For next sessions we will talk about read and write files, and also using NumPy, Matplotlib, and other useful packages in Python. And I hope to learn suitable things in this session, and practice those concepts with yourself. Hope to see you in the next session. Bye.